Back in 2011, I was within a circle of friends that made it a tradition to go camping at a certain spot every long weekend in May. The spot we chose was in a beautiful area right on the edge of the lake and was located on government land. The lake itself had a dam on it, so during May, the water levels were always low, if not completely empty, making it possible to walk across. People were allowed to camp there as long as they weren't causing trouble or making a mess. It was generally a good time for everyone. The spots themselves were spaced far enough apart that you had your own privacy, but not far enough apart that you couldn't meet other people. In this particular year, our spot was in the middle of a small hill, with one campsite below us and one above us. The first night of our trip happened without incident. During the second day, the people staying at the site below us had moved in. We didn't think much of it and continued drinking throughout the day and into the night. At about around midnight, the people at the campsite below us were really getting out of control. They were yelling and screaming, and their music had gotten even louder, so our friend Ben went down to ask them if they could turn it down. He was promptly punched in the face and came back to inform us that he was 90% sure that they were on drugs. After that, the vibe wasn't as relaxed as it was, and we were all somewhat on edge. I was feeling really tired, so I just decided to go to bed. Some of my friends were still awake, including Ben and one couple, Lily and Derek, who were visiting another campsite we had made friends with that day. I could hear that the campsite below us was still blasting their music and partying pretty hard, but I just tried to ignore it and go to sleep. I don't know what time it was when I was jolted awake. Parts of this are somewhat of a blur. All I know that I sat straight up as soon as I heard the screaming and yelling coming from outside my tent. I quickly ran outside to find our campsite in chaos. One of my friends was clutching their chest. People were running around and screaming to call 911. I was quickly informed of what happened. Apparently, not after I had gone to bed, the people camping on the site below us decided they weren't finished talking to Ben, and on their way up, they had encountered Lily and Derek walking back. Now, Derek and Ben are about the same height and have the same color hair, so they assumed that Derek was Ben and bottled both him and Lily over the head with a full glass bottle. I don't know if it was the same guys that showed up at our campsite, but I was told that everyone else was sitting around the fire when 2 or 3 huge guys appeared in the darkness and walked over to them. One had a paring knife and the other had a butcher's knife in their hands. Ben saw the knives and had gotten up to talk to them and had barely spoken a word when the guy with the paring knife stabbed him in the chest. At the same time, some people from the campsite above us had seen the guys coming and came down to help. One of the other guys, Tim, was coming down the hill when the guy with the butcher's knife ran up to him and stabbed him in the stomach. From there, sheer panic ensued. People called 911, but the ambulance was over half an hour away. This is when I came out of the tent. Tim's wound was bleeding profusely, and he was losing blood way too quickly. His friends ended up putting him in the back of his car and speeding off to meet the ambulance halfway. Ben was also bleeding, but his wound wasn't as deep as Tim's, and we were able to keep him calm until the ambulance arrived. The guys with the knives ran off into the darkness, back down to their campsite, and took off in their Land Rover. My boyfriend at the time and I had gotten into his car and drove to the entrance to try to flag down the policemen on their way to the scene. Once they arrived, we were informed to stay in the car, as they had released a canine search to hunt down the people who stabbed our friends. By the end of the night, they had arrested the men. They had tried to flee by driving their vehicle across the lake bed, where they got stuck in a muddy section of the lake. They were on a slew of several different drugs, which wasn't really a surprise to anyone. Luckily, both Tim and Ben survived, although Tim had lost a lot of blood, and it took a few weeks for him to recover from his wounds. Derek and Lily had huge goose eggs, and possibly one person had a concussion, but I can't recall. It was definitely the scariest thing that I had ever experienced, and a few of us had to testify against them in court. I've attached an online article about it if you're interested. The link will be in the description. Let me start off by saying this is going to be a long one, mainly because so much shit went down over 2 years and it still fries my brain. But anyway, here we go. A few years ago back in high school, I had a best friend. Her name was Kate. Kate was a total 10. She had beautiful hair and an outgoing personality that demanded all eyes on her. Naturally, I was drawn to her, as were many others in my school. My story of Kate and how she destroyed my ability to trust anyone started one day after she failed to show up to her English class. She was a seemingly good student with a high attendance record, so for her not to show up was very peculiar. However, I just assumed she must be ill and didn't give it much thought. Later that evening, I received a frenzy of messages, all from my friends, all desperately trying to find Kate, as her parents nor the police could locate her. It was winter, and might I add that I live in Scotland, so it's bloody cold. So, for her to be out alone deeply concerned me. I was awake all night and heard nothing until the next day at school. It's the beginning of the school day, so typically I go to the bathroom and reapply all my makeup my mom made me wash off. I open the door to see Kate in floods of tears with a massive purple and blue eye. As a 16-year-old girl, I was filled with the ideas of what she went through coursing through my brain. My sweet, kind, loving old pal. How could any monster hurt her? Only time would tell who the real monster was in all of this. After much counseling and back-patting, Kate decided to reveal a tale of disappearing. It had been the eve of her granny's death anniversary. The one and only family member, apparently, who really loved her. She had a dad who abused her and was at her wit's end. It was time to get away. She embarked on a trip to the next city. There's literally only 3 big cities in Scotland, so for the sake of staying anonymous, we'll just call it the city where her grandma used to live. She stayed outside the house all night in the rain until the police had located her by her phone tracker and brought her home. Her dad was so furious that in a fit of rage, he had embellished her with a black eye. Well, it's safe to say that I was absolutely dumbfounded. At only 16, living in a small middle-class village, it's fair to say that I had a rather sheltered lifestyle. I decided I would do anything to look after her, and even my mom agreed to let Kate stay with us whenever she wished. She begged me not to tell, especially not the police, as she feared tearing her family apart. At that time, I kept my word. It wasn't long before whispers coursed through the school of Kate and her abusive father. Everyone seemed to know, despite having kept my mouth shut. It was apparent Kate had not. Everyone was talking about her, how terrible it was. She seemed distraught at so many people knowing, but as I found out from more people, it was her who spoke so freely about it. Weeks would pass, bruises faded, and life seemed to return to normal. Normal was not good enough for Kate. I don't know if it was just a Scottish thing, but a few years ago, there was a social media phase called the neck nomination. Basically, being the disgustingly big drinkers that we are over here, the neck nomination was a challenge where one would record themselves downing a pint of whatever desired alcohol in one, all in the name of banter. Before leaving school one Friday, my friend Kate had been nominated for this challenge, and she announced that she would take it to the next level. She had bought a liter of Smirnoff vodka, the largest bottle of vodka, from an older kid, and downed the whole thing straight and recorded it. As typical teenage girls, we had a group chat, and we were aware of what Kate was doing alone. All of us were terrified, messaging her frantically to check if she was still alive and had not died of alcohol poisoning. Kate had never drank in her life, as she told us her dad was an extreme alcoholic, but that amount of vodka, especially in one go, could kill someone. Endless messages and phone calls, but no answer from Kate. Nothing until the next day, when she said her mom found her passed out on the bedroom floor, and her dad had yet again marked her with his signature black eye. Looking back, I should have had some sort of red flag at this point. Surely after drinking that whole bottle, which she showed me a video of, she would have at least been hospitalized for alcohol poisoning. Once again, Kate was the talk of the school. Everyone had seen the video, but Kate wants, she fucking gets. Halloween arrives, and this is where it all gets real. As Kate does, she likes a big event, something that will grab everyone's attention. She had been talking for months about how she was going as a Playboy bunny at the Halloween disco, and I'm not joking, this shit was not moderated. She had purchased full-blown fishnets, ass out and everything. The Halloween disco was full of friends and horny post-pubescent teenagers waiting for Kate's arrival, but we got nothing, not one word from her all night. The next day arrived and we finally had contact. Kate was apparently getting ready for the disco when her dad storms in, grabs her by the hair, and smashes her head into the ground. In a desperate plea to escape, she grabbed a handful of her father's antidepressants, overdosed, and was rushed to the hospital. I was distraught and at my wit's end. I couldn't keep my mouth shut for much longer. I visited her the next day before taking action. She was shaking, Her jaw was clenched, and she refused to eat. Alongside was an array of McCoy's crisps, her favorite, fruit shots, again another Kate staple, and McDonald's. Obviously, she had informed me that a lot of people had stopped by before me. Her mom was trying to make her eat, and the frustration poured through her voice. At the time, I was angry at her mom. Where was all the compassion? Her poor daughter had been through so much. It wasn't long before I went to see my favorite teacher, Miss Campbell. I told her everything, the overdose, the abuse, and the running away. She went straight to the school office and told me she would see what she could do. I waited in the computer room. It was my final year, and I was desperately trying to get into a university while being on suicide watch. It wasn't long before Miss Campbell returned. She told me the school was aware of Kate's situation, but there was nothing they could do. Kate had claimed that she was the one who gave the bruises to herself. Pure anger gripped me. I could not understand why she would be keeping herself in danger. I was outraged by the police dropping this. A month later, after a cycle of bruises and overdoses, one time an ambulance came as she had overdosed in school in front of my friends and I during lunch. Everyone saw it. It was right in plain view. Later, I received a text from Kate's sister. It read, "Me and my parents are grateful for the people that are looking out for Kate. We are aware that she's gone to school with bruises before. These are things that she has done to herself and are receiving help for. We are very upset/angry that she's saying the things she had said, but we are now concerned that she will isolate herself due to her lies, and that may make things worse for her. Thanks again. We really appreciate your help." I wasn't convinced. Surely it was not all a lie. I mean, that is some proper Gone Girl shit right there. Surely not my sweet friend. But anyway, I exchanged messages about if that was the case, then Kate obviously needs help, and that no matter what, I'd be there. The lies kept unraveling, however. Various friends told me the different versions of each story, how Kate's dad had forced the antidepressants down her mouth, and how she hadn't gone to her grand's, but rather hid in a park near her house for hours. I was taken aback and didn't know how to handle it all. I didn't know what to believe, but I took a step back. I distanced myself. I had exams and a severely ill boyfriend to concern myself with. Kate had to be pushed aside. I wasn't unpleasant. I replied when she spoke to me and smiled when passing. Kate picked up on this. She knew she was losing one of her victims to her little sick puppet show. This was when I knew that she was crazy. I used to go to the gym after school every day to relieve stress. However, on this day, I had to leave early as my English tutor changed my lesson time. Thank God I did. I returned home with a bunch of accusing messages asking what I did to Kate. Apparently, she had been walking around the gym, asking people where I was in fits of tears, saying she absolutely needed to speak to me. Well, the next day, I was damn sure to avoid her. Pleasantries out the window from me. Kate didn't stop there. I'd seen right through her lies, and she would not stop until she got her revenge. She confided individually to people about how I did not support her in her mental health issues, but rather told her she was a dumb bitch. This was 100% not true. I had wholeheartedly supported her and even told some very personal stories of my own to her. But then, it got worse. She told people that I chose those words as they were the exact words her rapist said to her before he, well, did something horrible to her. The story of the apparent rapist is too long to tell, but believe me, it's not true. Fair to say, a large variety of people in my school thought that I was a monster. Even my friends had started to believe her. More rumors occurred. More love for Kate grew as hate towards me spiraled. I blocked her off everything. I avoided her at all cost. I spent every break and every lunchtime in the gym instead of with my friends. But people started to doubt her, and she blamed me. She screamed in my face, calling me everything under the sun. I've never seen such a sweet girl lose her temper, pure venom in her eyes. Everyone took a step back. She realized that she lost her cool, that by hating me, she was pushing everyone away, and slowly cutting the strings that connected her puppets to her hands. Summer came, and I was finally free. Free from the bitch who overdosed in front of me, which I later found out was fake. The ambulance relieved her, and she was sent home. She also had never gone to the hospital, according to her sister. But anyways, I'm losing my point here. I was free. Little did I know, only for a few months. The next time I saw Kate was in court. Her accusations of someone else had gone too far, and I was called as a witness. If there's anything I can take from this experience, It's that I helped someone who could have been wrongfully convicted. Apart from that, she seemed genuine. Her tears felt real. Her pain that I felt in my whole body. Now when I see her, I feel putrid hate surge through my veins. So Kate, when I move back home next month, don't ever fucking look my way. The way you used me, I still feel exploited for that, and I'll never forgive you. So, my uncle has a great story he told us a few times, which is completely true. You can look up the news article in the city records. He hopped on a freight train near Seattle, bound for California, with his friend at the age of 8. Well, they didn't know it until they were in the car that there was already a bunch of hobos in there. It was already late afternoon, so it got dark, and it started to get really cold, as there was just an open door there. The kids were getting pretty chilled, and the hobos asked them where they were from, but were not bothering them. Then a bum fight broke out over something. This giant, huge, mean-looking bum got up and reached around another bum's neck. The kids didn't know why they were fighting, maybe over booze or something, but the bum held the guy on the side of the car as they were passing over a cliff or bridge and dropped him out the other side of the car. At this point, the kids were both freezing and terrified. They rolled into a town somewhere in Southern California to stop, and a big bum introduced himself and said, "You kids come with old Billy, and old Billy will take care of you." Billy, who had probably just killed a man, put his arm around them and told them he was going to find them something to eat. They waited for a chance to break for it, and did so, and didn't see him again. It was now morning, and they wandered down to the beach near this town, and by now the police were searching for them up in Seattle. They walked along the beach as they could see beachcombers and people sitting on towels. They noticed a group of people approaching other groups, and something disturbing was happening. The beachgoers would get up and gather their things and run from this group. On the Pacific beaches, you can see for long ways down the beach. So the kids got scared and ran up into the rocks, but it was too late. These weirdos had seen them and started to look for them. They came up out of their hiding spot and were caught by a pair of them. One guy had long greasy hair and had a huge distorted nose and a scar across his face. He said to them, "You kids are coming with us, you've seen too much," and they took them back to their car and put them in the back seat. As they were driving along, the ugly one said, "Man, wouldn't you like to see the blood flow from one of these two?" The kids were terrified, and this was before child safety locks. The car stopped at an intersection, which was pretty busy, and they unlocked the door and made a break for it. Luckily, they got away, and someone found them and took them to a police station, and that's how they returned home. It turns out these two kidnappers were responsible for the beach murders during that time period, and they were later caught. They had been robbing and killing people and living on the beach. Pretty scary. I was never this crazy as a child. To jump on a freight train after school. Creepy mutilated beach bum and company. Let's not meet. To start off with a little background information, I was a 13-year-old girl and an early bloomer, if you know what I mean, and I'm pretty tall for my age, so I looked older than I really was. Normally, at the bus stop, when it was nice out, I would pick up my little brother from school, since I got out of school before he did, and it was about 20 houses down. I would always take my dog Caesar with me, because he loved the attention and a good walk. I wouldn't say we lived in a good area, but by no means was it horrible trash. Across the street from our bus stop was a blue house that had still been listed on the sex offender list if you looked up the address, but I wasn't ever really scared of it because nothing had ever happened. The people that lived there consisted of 4 white men that were the definition of white trash. Their age ranges from what we think are 18 to 45. There's also an old lady who is in her 60s or 70s who lives there. She has a grandson who is 8, but he didn't technically live there. She also drove the guys everywhere. One day, I was waiting at the bus stop with Caesar. Well, 4 of them were outside, 2 of them playing basketball. The oldest man sitting in a long chair, drinking a beer and smoking a cigar with one of the younger guys. I was on my phone and had my pocket knife in my back pocket because I'm very protective of myself. This older man sets his beer down and puts out his cigar. He walks across the street, over kinda closer to me, and I discreetly backed up a little. I just thought he was waiting for the kid that visited the old lady every week. I think he's her grandson, but I don't really know. He comes closer to me and asks to pet my dog. At this point, my dog is beginning to growl. I say sure because I was very awkward at this age and try to get my dog to sit, and at this point, Caesar is full on barking at this guy and won't stop. After a couple of minutes, I say sorry he wouldn't come down, but maybe later. I was just trying to be friendly. He looks at me, for the first time actually, because he had only been looking behind me the whole time. He smiles, and it was so creepy that it sends shivers down my spine when I think about it now. He says it's alright, and maybe next time you are here. He winks, walks away, and keeps clenching his fists so hard his knuckles turn white. After he walks away, Caesar calms down a little and starts sniffing behind him. There are 2 huge trees behind me and another row of houses. He keeps pulling, so I figure he sees a squirrel or something, because he only growls at squirrels. He starts full on barking at the trees. I then decide to walk him over to the actual bus stop, which is at the corner, and he finally calms down a little. A couple of minutes later, I hear the footsteps behind me, and I turn around, and I see a guy run out from behind the 2 big trees, and I immediately recognize him as the 4th guy from the house. Sadly, on November 7th, 2017, Caesar passes away at the age of 5 due to a cancerous tumor that spread into his lungs. I don't know what would have happened if my dog wasn't there to save me, but to the creepy old guy across the street from my bus stop, let's not meet again. I don't know what you were doing in those woods, and I don't want to figure it out.